Hello, welcome back on Madama today. Joining us back again, I'm Elaine Nopla, and with me in the studio I have Dr. Lee Manwai. He's a vitreoretinal surgeon. Hello and welcome on the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. We want to find out a little bit more because we understand that you're a vitreoretinal surgeon. Perhaps you can explain that a little bit, what you do.
Sure. Basically, I'm an eye doctor.
Okay.
And, we go through medical school. We actually spend time to study to become an eye doctor. And then there are some of us who then choose to subspecialize.
Okay.
So there are quite a few different areas where you can go into, and I chose to do the retina.
Right,
so
okay.
That's why I'm a retinal
And you're saying that it's
surgeon.
the back of the eye, right?
Yes, that's the back of the eye.
This front, this back. And then in order to get to the back of the eye, you have to go through the eye.
Well, I think you can look through, and you can also, to access it, surgically you have to go through, yes.
Oh my God, that one's already freaking me out. Anyhow, so we're here to talk about two particular topics today. We're talking about AMD as well as diabetic retinopathy. Perhaps you can explain to us what AMD is all about.
Sure. AMD actually, the name stands for age-related macular degeneration.
Okay.
As the name suggests, it's an age-related condition, so people over the age of 50 will be more at risk. And macular refers to that part of the retina which everyone uses the most. It's the central part of the retina, very sensitive part. We use that for reading, for driving, for all sorts of near activities. And it's a degenerative process. So what happens is in people who are predisposed to it, then they end up having poor vision in the center.
Right.
Start off early with distortion, and subsequently if left untreated or if they're unaware, then they can end up losing their central vision.
So essentially what are the main symptoms that you're experiencing AMD?
Sure. What happens in the beginning, you might just notice distortion.
Okay.
Simple things like, looking at the clock face might look a little bit funny.
Oh, okay.
And you might look a bit blurred.
Right.
You might put it aside and not think much about it.
Yeah,
If
because
you get
maybe you think that you're tired and stuff like that.
Correct, yeah. And basically, when it progresses, then you can end up, really losing your central vision. So
Right.
if you're looking at me now, you might just maybe see my ears and not my
Really?
my features, yeah.
Wow, okay.
So that could be the end stage.
Okay, so essentially you'll start losing vision from the center of your vision.
Yes.
But you'll still see the peripheral pretty
That's
much.
right. So people don't go, in the full sense of the word blind because they're still able to walk around. But, what quality of life do you have? You can't see what you're eating, you can't read, you can't drive.
Essentially there's no focus vision, right?
That's
You
right.
can see things sharply.
Well, some people can still see things blurred,
Yeah.
at very advanced stages with a lot of scarring and, what we call atrophy. You might end up with just a blind spot there.
Right.
So it might just be dark, and then everything else on the side you can see.
Usually at what age does this start?
It
the
varies,
earliest that
yeah.
you've heard of.
Well, it varies. I think over the age of 50, like I said, it would be increased risk. But if you look at people as they get older, obviously the percentage of people that have it get higher. So I would say it's people in the 70s and 80s will be definitely more at risk of developing an advanced form of the disease.
Right, so starting from 50 onwards, you'd see this probability increasing.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, in terms of AMD, I think we talked about, there's some visuals on screen, normal retina and diabetic retinopathy. We are looking at symptoms of normal vision. Is that the vision on the right that's someone who's experiencing diabetic retinopathy would have?
Well, I think that's, excuse me, that's a pretty good simulation because what happens there looks like there's certain areas in their vision that's missing or patchy. It could be from bleeding because diabetes, in effect, because of the poor sugar control, so they could get developed problems with their blood vessels, and the blood vessels bleed. And in the eyes, the fine blood vessels start to leak blood and fluid and proteins material, and you get swelling. So you get little patches of blind spots or blurred areas in the vision.
Okay, so now let's talk about diabetic retinopathy since we have that. Now, how is it different? What is the basic problems with diabetic retinopathy?
I think with as the name suggests, is a condition where you only
Related
get it
to the
if you
disease.
have diabetes.
Right.
And we know diabetes is a very, very prevalent problem,
Yep.
especially in our good food culture. So what happens?
And high sugar diet.
Yes, that's right. So what happens then is the problem starts when you have a resistance or an abnormal production of insulin,
Okay.
and you can't use sugar.
Yep.
So the sugar stays in the blood vessels, it damages the blood vessels, and in the eyes, where we are full of blood vessels, it causes bleeding and leakage, like I said.
Okay.
The difference there with AMD is that it can affect, in diabetic retinopathy, it can affect the whole retina. not just the center. It affects the center as well. It can also affect the whole retina.
Okay.
And you can really go blind with it, meaning you can completely lose vision because the bleeding can be so bad, and you can end up with a lot of scar tissue, and it causes the whole retina to detach, and you end up with, well, a totally blind eye.
And you're saying that a lot of people actually are not aware that this can happen to them.
Yes, I mean, you look at some of the local statistics that have been done. Well, last time I checked, 2006 data saying about 15% are diabetic in our country. I would think that probably up to 20 now, and those are people that we know of. There's still people walking around that never got checked. And out of these, you know, maybe less than 50% of them would have had an eye test. So there's not enough information to the public, or we are not, as doctors, telling the public enough that, you know, you need to get your eyes checked if you have diabetes. And otherwise, you could potentially only come in when it's too late, and you can't do anything.
Isn't there something that actually happens when if you are at risk of diabetes and therefore maybe diagnosed with possible being a possible diabetic, these are not checks that are in place for you to, you know, go through procedures and stuff like that?
I think in an ideal world that those should be in place.
Okay.
I think you know, healthcare in our country is such that, you know, we are trying very hard, I'm sure, be it in the government or private sector. We're trying to get information out there. You know, we do a lot of, you know, road shows and a lot of public forums to try and inform the public. But it all comes down to the individual. Excuse me. They have to be aware of how this disease is going to affect them and what they're going to do about it. So we cannot put the information as much as possible. Then they have to absorb it and then think, hey, I need to get my eyes tested. Otherwise, you know, I may not be able to enjoy life as you know.
And the lack of education on this is actually quite shocking, because with the advent of technology and everybody has access to, say, for example, Google and stuff like that, everybody should have all this at the tip of the fingers. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the prevention of this, because you're saying that, you know, what's actually causing the onset of this is an early detection is not in place. I mean, you can actually detect it early and you stop this from happening.
Sure. I think there are screening programs in place. I know of, well, in Perak anyway, that you know, the Ministry of Health have put in place lots of places where people can get screened. But obviously that is still falling short of the mark. But early detection is key, I think, to management of all diseases. So in the case of diabetic retinopathy or AMD, if we can discover early, then we can always, you know, hopefully nip it in the bud. And there are current treatments, particularly for AMD, which we can actually continually administer the treatment by injections into the eye and hopefully prevent it from getting worse. Same for diabetes. If we detect early, we have to monitor it closely, and if it comes to a stage where we need to treat, we can start treatment with laser to hopefully stabilize the situation before it becomes really bad. And if it gets really bad, then you end up with needing injections, or subsequently might need surgery as well.
Okay. I just want to have a quick question about, you know, some people think that, you're too sensitive, you know, or you're a little bit of a hypochondriac, you think that everything's wrong with you. So what do you think about that? I mean, people should still go and get themselves checked?
I think well, I think my philosophy is to have a balance, really. I think in all things that we do in life, I mean, it's not easy to achieve that balance. So being a hypochondriac, of course, you know, it can't be a good thing, because you're otherwise going to see the doctor every 5 minutes.
Yes,
everything under the sun. Yeah, so I think it's good to be aware, but obviously at the same time, you must also be aware. I mean, like you mentioned, there's a lot of information in Google, but be a bit careful about the kind of information you get from Google. A bit cynical, but because not all information is correct on the internet. But I think it's important to arm yourself with the knowledge and then spread it around, tell your loved ones, and hopefully that way, you know, you can get the word out and, you know, realize that, you know, the disease is out there. Doesn't mean you have it, but you know the symptoms. If you do develop early signs, get checked. I think there's a lot of things we can do.
Reduce risks and concerns. Now, thank you very much for sharing your information with us. That's all the time that we have on Brahma today. Thank you for watching. We'll be back as usual every day at 9 AM. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.